Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray and I teach watercolor, and today we are doing our Northern Lights tutorial. We have Keenan here working the cameras.
Hello.
Keenan, thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you for all the work and preparation you do for these tutorials.
You know, I put a lot of work into preparing these lessons.
You guys don't know this, but Keenan actually is the one that paints all of these projects and steps them out for me. We spend the majority of the time him showing me how to do it. So.
We just thought you would accept her more than
I mean, I'm
me.
a prettier face, let's be honest.
Yeah, I have a face for radio.
Okay, sorry you guys. Woo! So this Northern Lights project, it is fun and it is loose, and we're playing with color and we're playing with layers, and I'm just really excited to show you how to do this. And we will be doing this project in 5 steps. So our very first step is we will be wetting our entire paper and doing our green kind of S curve. Our second step is we will be doing a blue wash around our S curve. Our third step is we will be doing another layer of blue to make sure that sky is nice and dark, and then flicking white paint into it there, okay? Our fourth step is doing the trees, and then our very last step is doing our sharp stars. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So we're doing stars in 2 layers.
Man, I'm excited to see the S-curve before the sky.
Oh, it's pretty cool. All right, now I am using, hold on, let me flip this over. I'm using 5 colors in this project.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we got a lot here. So our first color is emerald green. And I love this emerald green for this project because it has like a neon element to it, especially when it dries. And so like, you see how bright that turns?
Yeah.
So that like color is gonna be super vibrant in our sky. Our second color that we have here is azure blue. Gorgeous blue.
Yes, it is.
Our third color here is berry blue. So we're gonna kind of mix those together.
I think that berry blue might be more of my favorite.
Really?
Yeah.
And then Payne's Gray and Bleed Proof White, which I'm not going to swatch because it's white paint.
Oh, on white paper.
Yep. All right. And I'm using 4 paintbrushes for this project.
Whoa.
Around 2, around 6, around 12, and a wash 1. The round 12 is just for us to work quick and big. The wash is to smooth out. I love to use mops or washes, just a way to smooth out any like unevenness in a painting. And then our 6 and our 2 kind of more for our details and our stars. But please just use whatever you have at home. Make whatever you have work. And yeah, let's do our oath and then we'll get started, okay? If you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
I promise to have fun.
Thank you. And I want to just call attention to the fact that Northern Lights, there's many different colors and there's many different like directions. Sometimes they're just like a line in the sky. Sometimes they're like a full like wave and wave and wave. Like sometimes they're just like almost like shoots of light. I don't know. I would love to see them in person. Haven't yet, but I will. But I just want to say that you have every right to change this project to whatever you want to change it to, especially if you have like your own reference photos. Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
You got it.
Okay. So my first step is I cut my paper in half. I'm working on a smaller paper because this is a lot of paint and a lot of water. And sometimes it's just easier to work on a smaller paper. It's not as intimidating and it's a little bit easier to get the shapes and everything that we need to. I'm gonna wet my paper with water first, then I'm gonna do my S, okay? So I'm gonna work fairly quickly. I'm gonna just use my 1-inch wash to wet it. So this is a nice big brush. I can just work quickly, just putting the water down.
Sarah, next time you do a letter project, could you put a K?
A K?
Uh-huh.
Yes. I put an S because it's my name. Okay, so while it's still wet, I'm going to take this emerald green. I'm not going to add anything to it. I'm going to go straight for the green, and I'm going to do it so my S kind of starts out wide and then curves and then kind of like goes back like this.
Oh, cool.
And then I want it to thicken as I move out, like that. And you can drop in I'm gonna drop in more color and just kind of let it. And the reason why we're kind of creating it where it's a little bit wider at the top is to give a sense of like space and dimension, okay? And like, go crazy with the colors and the bleeds, you know, like it's the Northern Lights. It could be so many different things. Boop, boop.
I've never seen the Northern Lights.
In person?
In person.
Me neither, but I will one day.
I've seen the movie Frequency, and that involves the Northern Lights.
Cool. Okay, now I'm gonna mix my two blues. And I'm gonna grab a little bit of this Payne's Gray to turn it to navy. And then I'm just gonna go along the edge here and work my way around the green. And if they touch a little bit, that's okay. Like, it's not a big deal. Let them bleed. Let them like do whatever it is that they're gonna do. Oh man, already this is looking so cool.
I know, that green is wild.
So I liked the top of my painting being a dark value, so I'm using like lots of paint here. And then as I work down, I'm gonna put a little bit of water on my brush and let it be a lighter value down here. Now you can see my green got a little bit wild down here. So you can lift. It won't totally erase it, but we can at least lighten it. Or you can leave it. Just be like, yeah, my Aurora lights went like so crazy. Okay, and this, so sometimes when your paper curves, paint will settle where it curves. So I'm just gonna kind of move it out. All right. Now this is where, if you want to, you can use your 1-inch wash. So I'm gonna kind of dry it off from when I did my wash. And I'm just gonna kind of like swoop some of these areas. Smooth it out. You see how that smooths out?
Oh, wow.
And maybe you don't like the smoothness, maybe you like the different blooms. So like just do what feels good to you. And I can't like stress enough, like just like go crazy, you know? Let these colors do a lot of the work for you.
Let them make it happen.
Yes. Okay, so that was step 2. Now we're gonna move on to step 3, which is I'm gonna look at the colors that I have going on here and the values, and I'm gonna say, is this as dark as I need it to be? Yours could be. I'm looking at it and I'm like, you know, I really want it to have that navy color and it's not quite there yet. So I'm gonna do another layer. So I'm gonna grab more berry and more azure, and this time I'm gonna grab more of this Payne's Gray because I want it to be dark. And then you can even take your scratch paper and kind of like test a color. Oh yeah, look at that.
That's
You see the
nice.
difference? Okay. So I want to make sure I have plenty to pull from when I go in to do this. So I'm gonna just kind of like drop the color in up here.
Could you imagine if, while you're painting, like, look how good this color is, and I just instead go, nope, bad, do it again. I'll accept that as a color, but I wholeheartedly disagree.
Be better. That's all you said.
Be better.
Mix it better. Okay. And I'm kind of liking how this is kind of just like bleeding in. I mean, like, I'm always torn between the smoothing it out and letting it like be, because I love blooms and textures, but like a nice blend, like a transitional blend is like so wonderful too. So like two sides of me are always fighting against each other. Like, do I let it be? Do I smooth it out? Do I let it be? Do I smooth it out? You know?
I do know.
It stresses me out.
When you start talking out loud when you're alone, that's when I get nervous.
Okay. And I just really am loving what's happening here. I don't think I want to mess with it.
I do too. It feels like, it feels wispy.
Yeah. So I'm going to leave that. You know what? I'm going to leave it and we're just going to see. We're just going to see where this takes us.
I like that.
Okay, now what we're going to do, and it's just a little step, is when your painting is damp, you can do little flecks of white in there, because if you look at the night sky and you look at stars, there are some stars that are farther away, which means their value is not as bright. And sometimes they're a little bit smaller. So even in the sky, there is dimension, there is space, there is like something that we're trying to communicate that's not just a blanket, okay? So what we can do is, and maybe I'll just use my 2. I'm going to take my bleed proof white and grab a little bit white here. And I always like to do a test flick first. Get rid of anything that's expensive around your space. And I'm just going to flick just a little. And these are going to blend out because our paper is wet. Okay? That's it. It's just a little bit.
That's like barely there.
Barely there. Okay? And now what we're gonna do is we need our painting to be totally dry. So I'm gonna use my heat it craft tool. I always forget the name of this dang thing.
That's why I call it a hairdryer, and I've been told to stop calling it a hairdryer.
They're like, Keenan, they're literally buying hair dryers. You're messing everybody up. Okay, actually I changed my mind. One thing that I'm noticing is I dropped in color here, and I just don't love how this is one value. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. I just feel like that's too big of a chunk to for it to be even. So I am gonna go in and lift a little bit of color out and do some water. Let's add some water in here.
Ooh, good idea. I'll accept it and agree.
And you're gonna get some crazy, I'm gonna get some crazy bleeds and blooms from this, but I wanna mess it up. I think it's too smooth and even, and I don't like that. Well, it's not that I don't like it, I just think it could be cooler. Yeah, okay, already I like that. All right, now let's dry it. Keenan, can I show you my favorite part that's happening already?
Yes.
This. Do you see that?
Yes.
Oh.
It's like a green fire.
Oh, it's so cool. Okay, you see what's happening to my stars? Those little flecks?
Oh, yes.
It's not crazy, but sometimes it's just the small little details like that that kind of like elevate your work.
Level up.
And the reason, contrary to what Keenan was saying, the reason why I did like this shape is because
S that you said multiple times.
Yes, the S is because I wanted it to feel, it was mostly composition. I wanted the viewer's eye to go up and across, okay? And a strong S shape within a composition is a very strong composition. If I were to just do, originally when I first did this project, I just had it kind of coming up from the middle and going straight up, and it felt really flat. It didn't feel like the sky didn't feel vast, it didn't feel long, and it was a little bit static, which meant that it just stood still. I wanted it to feel like movement. I wanted it to feel like water in the sky a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that's why I did this, because since it's narrow on the bottom and wide on the top, that's showing that space is passing. You know what I mean? And it just kind of like creates movement within our painting. Makes sense. As you're creating your own and doing your own painting here, like feel free to play with the shape of this. Okay.
You know what letter has a lot of movement?
K.
K. Is it going left? Is it going right? We don't up, down, yes.
It goes all the directions, actually.
We could really get some movement in this painting.
Okay. My bottom is dry, and that's really what we're gonna focus on right now. And we're gonna do our trees. Now, when it comes to the trees, I decided to have the trees be taller on the sides and be slightly angled in, okay? And then as they go to the bottom, they got shorter. So what I like to do is I like to start by just putting in my trunks and then kind of going from there. So I'm going to switch to my round 2. I'm going to use just Payne's Gray for this. And again, you want to make sure that your painting is dry. And I'm just going to start putting in my trunks, just thin lines. And they don't have to be solid because we'll be putting, okay. And what I wanted to do is I want it to be angled, then straight, and then angled the other way, okay?
Okay.
Okay, that feels good. But do you notice how evenly spaced they are?
So well evenly spaced.
So what I'm gonna do, and that's okay because I'm gonna definitely do more trees than what's here. This is just giving me the overall angles of my trees. So then when I go in and I add more, I just follow along. This is like the base structure. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so we got our trees and now we're gonna start putting in our branches or the needles or the shrub, the foliage, you know. There's many different types of trees. I like to do fir trees. I think they're nice.
They're needles. They've got to be needles.
Yeah.
Right?
What did I say?
Several things.
And just basically remember the overall shape, which is it's a triangle shape, narrow at the top, and then they get, your brush strokes are going to get wider and bigger as they go to the bottom to create that kind of triangle shape. Now, actually, some fir trees are angled up. The needles are actually angled up, and some of them are angled down and are a little bit more droopy. I wish I knew more about trees to tell you the differences and where they would grow and help you make that decision of which one you should do, but
this is a painting class.
I'm a watercolorist. I'm not a botanist. I am not a biologist. So I just paint whatever trees I want. And then some very nice people are like, those trees wouldn't even be near the northern lights. And then I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I'm showing everybody wrong.
How did I not know this?
So I like to do it in little chunks. So you can even like boop, 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 if that's helpful for you. And then kind of going off of that. Marks, boop, boop. And then, so some of them can be swoop. Some of them can be dots. And then even though we did these kind of chunks, there's still some little guys coming out of the tree trunk. You don't want to leave your trunk just a thin line, okay? And then now that I get more towards the bottom, I'm going to really push down more on my brush to get thicker marks. And they're going to overlap, and that's okay. I want them to overlap. And then maybe you have some trees where it's like even thicker. Like you see how this one's pretty thin in terms of denseness of the needles and the branches. There are some where like it's not as dense and some that are super dense. And I just love variation. I think variation is a wonderful way to show nature. And so like sometimes I'm super dense. Do you see how dense I'm being with my trees?
Yes.
Compared to this one? Mm-hmm. Do both, do all, and then other ones I do that are just like, see this one, how it's mostly the trunk and just a little bit of, so like, play with it is what I'm saying. And when you have so many trees next to each other, people are gonna be like, oh yeah, tree, and then like move on, you know? Like it doesn't have to be each one detailed perfectly. So now that I'm getting to the bottom, I'm doing nice, thick. But to give that feel, that sense of realism, after I do nice, thick like this, I'll go in and do really thin smaller ones along the edges. Because when things are laid on top of each other and are dense, they just turn into solid shapes. But on the edges of things, the silhouettes, that's where you're more likely to see the little pine needles going this way, or the little things like that. So that's where I'll do a little bit more of the detail work. Another thing that you can do, and this is if you're feeling a little bit like edgy, and you're just like, yeah, I do wild things, is I'll take my 6 that's dry. Let me rub off some of this paint. And while it's wet like this, I'll just like swoop some of this color out, just to get different textures. You see that?
Yeah, I like that.
It's just kind of like a fun way to add some different things. Oh gosh, I really love how that turned out. And then you can drop in black too if you lose some of your, or Payne's gray. Okay. So you notice that I'm kind of switching back and forth between my 2 and my 6 and my 1, and just kind of changing up my brush marks, because the biggest issue that I see, and maybe it's not even an issue, but the thing that I notice the most when people are first starting to do trees is that their brush stroke is exactly the same size and the same thing throughout the whole tree, and that kind of tends to make them flat. Okay?
Okay.
So to get that dimension, to get that realism, to get that form, we need to adjust our brush marks and our size. Because if you look at trees, the branches on the bottom are nice and thick. The branches on the top are nice and thin. And as they go out, they get smaller and smaller and smaller because it's growing, right? So that's what we're trying to do here with our trees. So this one I'm gonna maybe do a little bit like thinner. So this one I am kind of staying more towards just like the trunk. And it's so funny because like we get very much in our head about, is this tree straight? Is it even? Is it, but man, especially like if you're driving around a heavily wooded area and there's a ton of trees, you see some trees that are totally like on its side, like going this way, going that way. One side's way more dense than the other side, like
wonky trees are real.
Wonky trees are real. Thank you, Keaton.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna do another one right here.
It's a t-shirt coming out soon.
I would wear that. I would wear this shirt. Now, as you can see, I kind of just start wherever in my trees. Like I kind of started in the middle there. But if you want to start at the top, nice and small, and then work your way down and get bigger, you can. If it's easier for you to do the opposite, do the opposite. And let's bring this little guy to the party. Gosh, I love what that does.
Yeah, that's a cool little technique there.
If you have like a fan brush, you can do the same thing with a fan brush. Or like a smaller wash, because this is pretty thick for how small we're doing our trees, that it might not be as easy to control. So if you have a smaller brush, like a flat edge like that, use the smaller one. But it gets the job done, you know?
Yeah.
So now you see how I adjusted the spacing so they're not so evenly spaced. So add trees throughout so it's not just like the same tree, exactly the same width away from each other. What if I do some going up? Should I try that?
Yeah.
Would these be in the same like forest? I don't know.
Geographical area?
I don't know enough about trees.
Those two are similar heights. Does that affect anything?
I'm probably gonna do one little guy right here. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I'm gonna mess that up because you're right, they are I feel like so much of painting is like purposely going in and making it messy. Mm-hmm. That's my preferred. Ooh, I love how that tree came out.
I do too.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm gonna do a little guy right here. So it's a little bit shorter than these two, but not as short as this. Right in between. Boop. And I'm gonna have this one be really, what's the opposite of dense? Sparse?
Sparse.
This one's gonna be a sparse tree.
This makes me think of the Iron Giant.
Totally. I just bought that comic for my daughter, actually. The Iron Giant.
I love the Iron Giant.
And this one I'm gonna have, I really liked the up direction. I'm gonna keep going and I'm gonna make this one nice and thick, thicker than that one.
Did you know that Vin Diesel did the voice for Iron Giant?
No. Mm-hmm. That's cool.
I know.
Do you know you can hire Vin Diesel to come out and he will do your D&D games?
He will be your dungeon master.
He will be your dungeon master. That's the word.
Isn't that awesome?
Listen, you guys, we're going to start a GoFundMe to get Vin Diesel to come out here, and we're going to do a Let's Make Art Dungeons and Dragons, and we'll do it alive.
The lore could just be Let's Make Art people.
That would be so great. Okay, so I'm just kind of doing details with my two. And I feel like there needs to be another tree in here. Do you agree?
Not yet.
Okay.
Only because you've got those other two trees.
You're right. Let's maybe not be hasty in our decision making here.
Because that might be a pretty cool gap, because that light blue is gorgeous.
It really is, and I love the swoop there. Know. That kind of smoothness right across there turned out. All right. Let's do more trees. It's at this point that I'm like, how many trees do I really have to paint? What was it? I think it was, didn't we do a winter forest? There was like a billion little fir trees that I painted.
I was thinking of the more of the autumn one with the river through it and you had trees on either side.
Yeah. I read some of the comments of people that they were like, I am so tired of painting these trees. And I'm like, I get you. I do. Okay, I want to point out something. You see how this one's thickness is pretty much even the entire way from the top to the bottom?
Yes.
So if that happens, just be like, all right, I need to go into the bottom and adjust that and just make it thicker at the bottom. And then let's grab our gouache here and just kind of do some swoop textures.
And that is a cool texture.
There we go, that feels better. That tree seems like really crooked, doesn't it?
Which tree?
This one, like it's curving.
Well, yeah. He had a mishap with a really heavy squirrel.
If you notice that one of your trees are curving, one, you can let it go because trees totally curve in nature. There's nothing wrong with it. If it's throwing off your eye on your composition though, then I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna be like, okay, how do I straighten this guy out? So I'm gonna make that. And I feel like this needs to be, you like basically have to adjust your base.
I mean, just that little bit, you've already done changed it.
And then I feel like if I do more up here, maybe.
Oh, nice.
Does that feel better?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, gosh. I love what happened over here with this tree.
That big one?
Yeah, this big one. Let's do another big one.
Do it.
Do another big one, like thick like that.
Frame it in.
All right, I'm gonna switch to my 6 because this is gonna be big. And I'm gonna start at the bottom. And again, I'm just kind of doing, if you were to look at these marks independent from these trees, they're kind of dashes. And I overlap them. And I change the direction. They're not all going this way. Some of them I push, like sometimes I kind of push down, sometimes I push kind of up, sometimes I push this side or the other side. So it's basically just like, how many different marks can I get and directions? You see the difference? And like,
yeah.
Instead of boop. Because our brain, and I just want to tell you, if you're starting out, your brain is going to tell you to do this. And you're just going to do this for a million years and be super frustrated because it's still looking a little bit flat. So this is where I'm going to tell your brain to take a back seat. And we're just going to essentially like scribble. We're just going to let go. Because this is reading way more tree than this.
Totally.
You see?
Yep.
So like, the biggest thing with trees is to just go for it. Let it be messy. Let it be wild. Don't let your brain overwhelm you in terms of all of the different marks. Because the reason why our brain does that is because we know that there are tiny little elements all over this tree. The needles, the branches, the leaves, whatever have you, okay? So our brain thinks, I gotta draw those. I need to make tiny little marks across this entire thing because that's what we know trees are made out of. But that's not actually what we see. That's our brain kind of taking over and logically telling us what's going on instead of like us just paying attention to what's actually happening on the tree. I'll never forget during I was taking a drawing class and we had these gorgeous trees around Sac State, and so our teacher had us kind of go out because we were just going to draw trees that day, and she had us set up in this grove and there's these huge oaks everywhere and they're beautiful, and she's like, okay, go. And it was so funny because I set up and then I like take my pencil and then I just all of a sudden froze because all I could see were a million little leaves. And I was just like, what do I do? And I looked around me and everyone else was doing the same thing where they're like, how do we even start this? How do we start this? So then we, like a group of like 10 of us went to our teacher and we're just like, we don't even know where to start when it comes to this tree. There's so many things going on. And then that's when she's just like, first of all, get the overall shape, like your trunk, and then pay attention to the clumps. Pay attention to where these leaves create its own shape when they're together. Pay attention to where they overlap. Where is the sun, and then where are the highlights and the shadows, and start from there. So you're not going at a tree thinking, here's a leaf, here's a leaf, here's a leaf, here's a leaf. You're going at a tree being like, here's a clump, here's a trunk, and it goes out this way, and there's a clump here, and then it's highlighted on the top, and then the shadow kind of goes this way. You see?
Wow.
What I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
All of that is to say,
trees are overwhelming.
Trees are overwhelming. Don't get lost and just kind of have fun with it and go.
Cool.
Okay, where do we feel about this space? I feel like I need a long skinny here. What do you think?
I actually was thinking the original gap that you mentioned. Yeah.
Something there?
I was thinking it does need it because that's a big space.
Okay, let me do a long skinny here. And the reason I'm mostly doing a long skinny here is because this one is very similar to this one, which is very similar to this one. And I want to break up that shape a little bit.
Got it.
And I'm doing it closer to one of the trees than the other to kind of adjust that spacing so they're a little bit uneven. And we're just gonna do little, this one's gonna be sparse.
That's cool.
Yeah, kind of more just like a trunk. Okay, this guy right here, should it be thick or thin? What do you think?
I was thinking thin.
Well, we can always start thin, and then if we want to make it thicker, we can.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make this one shorter than this one, so about here.
Yeah, that's nice.
What do you think?
I think it's too short.
I just don't love that it's thick, thin, thick, thin, thick, thin.
Ooh, you're right.
I think I'm going to make this one thick. And that will mess up that pattern. What do you think?
Do it.
Let's just do it. And then I'll go in with my 1 and just like make a funky texture. My 1-inch wash.
Oh, that already looked better before, yeah.
And then I kind of just like, you can even go in like not even like against a tree, like just pick up some, just to make marks, especially along the bottom here. You know what I mean? Like we're just kind of messing it up. There's a lot of
empty space.
Foliage. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, this is a forest.
This is a forest, you guys.
Right next to the Northern Lights.
Ooh, that feels better to me. What do you think?
That looks great.
Oh, yes. Okay. I love how that turned out. Gosh, and I love how light this color came. That didn't happen in that reference photo. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we are going to do our stars. This is our very last step. And usually after you put in your stars, you don't mess with your painting. So if you have any adjustments that you got to make to your sky, I would make them now. I will say that I think I overworked my green area a little bit. I loved how light of a value I got in the middle of that. But I kind of really love what's happening here more. That is to say, there are going to be parts of your painting that you love and you don't love, and that's totally normal. Don't think that just because you didn't like this, that it devalues everything else that's happening on your paper, because it doesn't.
Cool.
So, I'm going to take my bleed-proof white. I'm going to take a scrap paper and block off my trees, because I don't want stars in my trees. And I'm going to take my 6. Rinse it, make sure it's clean. Grab some bleed-proof white. Now, the more watery your white is, the bigger splatters you're going to get. And also, once they dry, they might not stay that bright white. So you kind of want to pick up a paste texture. And again, I like to do a couple like tests. So, okay, do you see how big that? So that's why I like to do a couple tests first to make sure I'm not gonna get huge like drops on my painting.
Smart.
Okay, now it's kind of the consistency I'm looking for, and I'm okay, maybe pick up some more, do a couple tests. And I do want some that are a little bit bigger, maybe not as all right, and now I'm gonna take my 2 and I'm gonna do some bigger, like pointed, like white stars. Mm-hmm. So I'm taking my 2, grabbing some white. I'm gonna do one up here. Let's do one here. If you know about constellations, maybe you can put a constellation in here.
Oh, have you ever seen the constellation named K?
I have heard of that one, actually.
It's one of my favorites.
Okay, so this star got a little bit bigger than I wanted. And so what I like to do with stars that get a little bit bigger than I want is I just turn them into a shooting star by like smearing that paint.
Nice. That's cool.
Gosh, I love how that turned out.
Yeah, that looks amazing.
Love it. Okay. Now, you know for this one, we got to do a reveal because the edges are nice and dark. So, What I personally, I like to let my paintings dry for at least 24 hours taped to whatever surface I painted on. That's why having like art boards are helpful, so then you can still use your desk. And that just makes it dry a little bit more flat. I know that since this is, even though it might to the touch be dry, it's actually still kind of moist. So if I were to untape this right now, this paper is going to continue to curl as it dries. But if you leave this taped to a surface for at least 24 hours, you still will have a little bit of a curl, and that's true for all watercolor papers, but it will be more flat. So for those at home, let it dry. And when you remove the tape, you want to go slowly. You want to move at a 90-degree angle, so right across. And you're pulling away from your paper. Oh, gosh. Do you see that clean edge? Oh, I got a little bit of a bleed. That's okay. Good thing we have our bonus item. Do you know what our bonus item is?
No, I do not.
So our bonus item in this Waves of Change box is it's a magic eraser, which is a household cleaning item. It's essentially like really, really fine sandpaper, but it works wonders on removing unwanted paint marks on your paper.
Oh.
Yep. So if you were really careful, you could go in with your magic eraser and lift that up and erase it.
Dang.
Yeah. It has saved my butt many of times when doing commissions and I accidentally drop a freaking water drop in the middle of it.
Where it's not supposed to be.
Where it's not supposed to be, and there's like this blue splatter, and I'm like, no! But you can just pick it up. It's really great. Oh, yes.
Wow. Look at
that. Oh my gosh. If I were to do this one more time, I would do one run through of this to keep this lighter, but I loved how this turned out. This stole the show right here.
Sky.
This just added so much. Oh, and this is a great illustration of, this is mostly an even value wash. Do you see that? It gets a little bit darker up here, but from this down, it's essentially the same.
Right.
Having a color transition that way, do you see how much more it seems like the sky goes farther back? This is,
oh,
you see what I'm saying? This
yes.
is how much a value transition matters in painting. So if you're trying to do landscapes and your fields or your sky or anything is just looking flat, make sure that you have a nice transition in your values and you will get that depth. You will get that sense of space. It is amazing.
That's crazy.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so I hope you had fun painting this. And gosh, the Northern Lights come in so many different colors.
Yeah.
There's like purples and there's so many options. So please have fun when you're making this. Please show me how it turned out. Everybody's is gonna look so different. You can tag us on Facebook or join our watercolor group. That's called Let's Make Art Watercolor. You can tag us on Instagram, and that is at Let's Go Make Art, or hashtag Let's Make Art, or hashtag Let's Make Art Watercolor. You can tag me. I'm Sarah Dandelion Cray. I love seeing what you guys make. Keenan, do you have a handle you want to share?
I have an Instagram. The handle is the name that you tag people with. It's on there.
K.
It starts with a K.
It starts with a K.
Ends with a sun.
So thank you so much for taking the time to paint with me, and I just want to congratulate you on taking the time for yourself. It is not easy committing to your creativity because our time is demanded. Everybody wants it. You know what I mean? Like, that's the one thing that everybody wants all the time, and we can't get more of it. Time is time. So the fact that you choose to spend it committing to your creativity and one step further with us means so much. So thank you so much for painting with me. I cannot wait to see what you guys come up with, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.